Hello everyone, it's Wilson here. Today let's talk about this problem here. Actually, it's not one problem, it's 8 problems right here. Okay, so what's going on here is that we are only given the graph of a function. We actually have no idea what the function is. We probably can come up with a function, but that's not what we are interested in. We are interested in finding 6 limits and then also 2 function values, right? You probably know how to do those 2 problems from your basic algebra class. That's not really the main focus here. The main focus here is to compare how each limit or the function value or relate to each other or relate to the graph. Okay, so let's get started. First, we are going to look at those two. We have x approaching -3 from the left side, and then this one is x approaching -3 from the right side, right? So those are two one-sided limits. Okay, so now we actually need to look at this value right here for those two problems. Okay, so for those two, we are looking at this one right here. Okay, and so now the question is, what's going on here with this -3? What we are trying to do here is that we are given that x is approaching -3, and now when x is approaching -3, we want to know the y value of the function. We want to know what the y values of the function are approaching to. Okay, so let's consider a sequence of x values that are approaching -3 from the left side, and then you can think of that as what? Well, anything on the left side would be -3.1, -3.01, -3.001, -3.00001, and so on, right? So now we want to see what happens when x is getting arbitrarily close to -3. What happens to the y values? And so in this case, when we are trying to come up with results, we actually need to look at the y-axis. We need to look at the y value of the point that the function is approaching to, or sometimes there is no point there. So then we still want to see what the y values are approaching to. Okay, so let's get started. So if you look at this one, this says -3 right here. So now what happens is that when x is approaching -3 from the left side, this is -3, right? X is equal to -3 here, and on the left side it's here. So what are we actually doing here? You can actually draw some arrows on the graph. You can actually see that, okay, so do you see what's going on here? The y values are starting from, if I started with my arrow right here, that's a little bit above 2, right? And so that's like 2 point something, and then getting smaller, like 1 point something, 1 point something, 1 point something, and eventually it's getting arbitrarily close to what? 1. Okay, so it's getting arbitrarily close to 1. So what is the limit here? The limit is equal to 1. Okay, so it's actually that simple, right? So based on the graph, we can come up with the limit. Now, what happens when x is approaching -3 on the right side? This time we are going to approach from the right side, right? So we gotta look at this side here, and then it's getting closer and closer, right? We can just pretend that we are also starting from a y value of maybe 2, and then getting closer, it's like 1.7, 1.5, 1.2, 1.1, and so on, right? 1.01, and it's actually getting arbitrarily close to the y value of 1. So we can also say that that's equal to 1. Okay, so the function is approaching to 1 as x is approaching -3 from the right. Now, what about the two-sided limit? X is approaching -3 here. There is no direction indicated here, so that means that's a two-sided limit. We gotta consider both sides at the same time. And because the two one-sided limits are equal to 1, so what can we say here? Because they're equal, the two-sided limit exists, and it's also equal to 1. Okay, because left side it's approaching 1, right side it's also approaching 1, so we are getting 1 here. Now, this one, it's just asking for the function value. That's really just saying what happens when x is equal to -3, right? So this is actually the x value that you are plugging into the function. What is the y value? This is y, right? Y equals f of x. So when x is given, what is the y? And because there was no solid dot right here, there was no point at x equals -3. So the function is actually undefined at this spot. So we'll just say that this is undefined. Okay, or you can simply say that it does not exist. Okay, now let's look at this column right here. This time we are going to look at the function when x is approaching 1, right? 1 from the left side, 1 from the right side, and then approaching 1 from both sides. And let's see what's going on here. So what happens is that when x is approaching 1 on the left side, this time we are looking at this. This is the 1, right? When x is approaching 1 from the left side, then we are looking at this piece of the function right here. Do you see what's going on here? It's actually starting from maybe like 4 and then getting closer and closer, and eventually it's getting arbitrarily close to the number 5, right? I know that it's an open circle right here, but it doesn't really matter because we are just trying to see what the y values are approaching to when the x values are approaching 1 from the left side, right? So the y values are actually getting closer and closer to what, 5, right? So now our answer here is 5. Okay, so it's actually that simple. And then what about the right side? The right side, you got to look at this piece here. So because x equals 1 is right here, and then on the right side of the 1, we actually have this piece of the function. As you can see, this is a piecewise function. And so what happens is that if we are getting closer, let's say we're starting from maybe like 0.4, 0.5 or something like that, and then it's getting closer, we draw some arrows, and then it's actually getting arbitrarily close to 1. So the limit is equal to 1, okay? And then now, what about the two-sided limit when x is approaching 1? Because the two one-sided limits are not equal to each other, okay? Because that's 5, that's 1, so they're not equal, then this limit does not exist. So the DNE stands for does not exist, so we will just write down the result here. Okay, what about the function value? If you compare this with the previous problem, we actually have that function value to be undefined. F is not defined at -3 because there is no solid dot right here at the -3. But what about 1? We do have a solid dot here. We are not looking at the limits anymore. We are not looking at the 5 or the 1 here. We are actually having the y value is what, 3. Okay, so the answer is 3. So this is the point that we are looking at here. Okay, so this is f. Well, actually, instead of writing it that way, let me write it as 1 comma 3, right? So that's our point. But that point is not there. It's an open circle. Okay, so that's it for this problem. There are 8 problems, and we do it really quickly. As long as you understand the idea for finding the limit with the one-sided limits and also the two-sided limits, then looking at the graph and can actually be really easy to find. Okay, so that's it for this problem. If you like this video, please give me a like, subscribe to my channel, and share my videos to others. It will give me support to make more videos. If you have questions or have a topic that you want me to talk about, please leave me a comment. Thank you for watching.